recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week we continue our look at The House That Dripped Blood, Amicus, particularly the horror anthology films produced by Amicus in the 60s and early 70s. This week we discuss 1967's Torture Garden, directed by Freddie Francis. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Howdy.
Howdy. And from Los Angeles tonight, Adam Foshko, screenwriter for the new Skylanders Superchargers, story consultant for Destiny the Taken King, and writer and creative producer for Call of Duty Advanced Warfare Exo Zombies. Say hello.
Stare into the shears.
Stare into the shears. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Torture Garden, so excited to talk about this movie, is a 1967 British horror film made by Amicus. It is directed by Freddie Francis, who directed the film we talked about last week, and scripted by Robert Bloch, who's the writer of Psycho. It stars Burgess Meredith, Jack Palance, or Palance, I don't know how to say his name.
I think it's Palance.
Okay, Michael Ripper, Beverly Adams, Peter Cushing, Ursula Howes, a bunch of people. The score was a collaboration between Hammer Horror regulars James Bernard and Don Banks, and you can tell as you go along. It is the second Amicus portmanteau or anthology film created originally by Milton Zabotsky, who was the mastermind behind Amicus. So
portmanteau, by the way, means wear a coat in French, so it's like a coat-wearing movie.
In other words, in that word, the framing device is the coat over these stories. So you have the stories and you have a framing device around them. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we, before we did this series, we had really only done, we did the Creep Show anthologies, but I wanted to mention we also did Trick or Treat, which is the only anthology I can think of that doesn't do it this way, where instead of like doing them one after the other, it alternates the narrative.
Well, Trick or Treat is almost like Pulp Fiction in a way, isn't there? There's all these different stories that they're taking place in the same town, kind of at different points in time.
But if you think about it, you can almost do that with one of these by cutting them up and then alternating them between, with a few exceptions. But okay, let's go ahead and get our opening thoughts. Let's go, Adam, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. Adam, what are your opening thoughts on 1967's Torture Garden?
I'll be flat out honest. I love this movie. This is the first of the kind of anthology movies that I'd seen. I was a really little kid when I saw this, of course, which explains a lot. And I was very familiar with the different stories, but it seems like whenever it came on, it was on television that I saw this. Whenever it came on, it was usually the first one with the cat that was pretty much always on, which of course made me feel a certain way about cats, like they might eat my head. But it affirmed that for me, and of course my love for Burgess Meredith, which he is absolutely charming in this movie. There's so much, I'll call it whimsy for lack of a better word. It's a movie that doesn't take itself, at least the rapper doesn't take itself too seriously. And he, unlike the movie that we did last week, where we were wondering whether or not there was some miscasting, particularly when it came to the Crypt Keeper, he is wonderfully cast. And he actually, he's able to shoulder a lot of there's menace and there's charm and there's seduction and there's a certain amount of kind of, there's a suave but slightly comedic sort of element to it. I've never seen so many costume changes in just a short amount of time. And
that is, you're talking about Burgess Meredith.
Burgess Meredith, and he just,
showman, whatever he's called, the host of this place called the Torture.
Yeah, is Dr. Diablo, and what's so interesting is, he changes his face, he changes his makeup, he changes his clothes, he changes his tie, as if to say that, like, as is, we'll talk about the reveal later, but he is a he is a man who fits into a variety of situations and is able to meet people where they are. And in this particular case, he shoulders that incredibly well, and is the perfect counter to, I think, the sort of sub movies that are sort of each chapter sort of within it. It just is this really nice counter. And you either like the little movies that are in between, or you have your favorite. But it seems like the wrapper is always something that continues to be fascinating. And we'll talk about it later. But there's some fourth wall breaking and all that, which seems to be again something that was done in the previous movie, but is done with, I don't know, it's kind of goofy, but it's really charming the way they do it. So you can tell I have a lot of fondness for this movie. So those are my opening thoughts.
Very, very good. Choya, I don't know if you'd ever seen this film before, but what are your opening thoughts on Torture Garden?
No, I had not seen this movie before. I enjoyed it. There's again, like with last week, some of the stories are better than others, but I thought they were all good. Like, unlike last time, there weren't any that I was just like, oh God, why did give me my 20 minutes back or however long they were. And so I think that was really interesting and entertaining. I actually like the framing story this time. Whereas last time I was just really irritated that they just are in this catacombs, and then suddenly it's like limbo or purgatory, whatever the way station is before you go to hell. This one, it's actually pretty fun. The torture garden itself is just it's like a sideshow at a carnival or whatever, where he's showing all the different kinds of torture devices that they used to have, and then they go in the back room and there's this whole other thing. But so I thought it was neat. It was really fun.
Very cool. Drew, anything you want to add to that?
Well, unlike a lot of the movies that we do on this podcast, I had no real familiarity with this movie, and it did not disappoint. I thought this movie is first of all, it's a lot better than the EC comics adaptation that is Tales from the Crypt. I mean, I enjoy that movie, but I think this is heads and shoulders a better movie, and it actually, I think, does a better job of capturing the EC comics spirit, despite that being an adaptation. Very little torture in the Torture Garden, which amused me a little bit. But Burgess Meredith does rock as Dr. Diablo. It's got a really good horror pedigree throughout the entire thing, from the cast right down to Robert Bloch. This is just a good little movie. It cuts along very quickly. Unlike a lot of anthology movies, it doesn't drag at all, and I dug it. I think Julia's right. The wraparound story to this is a lot better than many movies of this type, and I think Burgess Meredith really does a lot to keep it entertaining while you're waiting for the next story to start.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's the big difference is that the guy that leads the other one was completely forgettable, but whereas Burgess Meredith, it's not forgettable at all. He's very interesting.
Right, it was Ralph Richardson before, but Ralph Richardson was so somber. The part that he was playing, he was very somber. Yeah, and whereas this, Burgess Meredith, part of the fact is that part of it is that his world, the Torture Garden, and the Torture Garden of the title is merely the name of the exhibit that he barks basically in this the park here, and the carnival. It's this place you go into, and he has it's an exhibit of different torture devices from the past, and he shows them off, and that's the conceit for gathering people, and then he gathers a smaller group who are going to be our main group of this Amicus film, because Amicus Portmanteau films always require that there be a small group of people who find themselves standing around together, even though they hadn't planned to. But he's so entertaining, I think, because of the carnival aspect, that he's over the top. He doesn't worry at all about sounding like a realistic person. The way he's talking is more like a showman, but it's okay because his character is a showman. He's supposed to be on and entertaining people, and they're all doing more naturalistic performances and going, you know, are you yanking our chain, or can we trust you? I can't believe we've given you money. And so that kind of allows the movie to have its cake and eat it too, where, you know, he can be both unrealistic but also be believable, so you can go with him. Let me just say the final thought in my opening thoughts. I had no idea this movie existed until a few years ago. I decided I was just, you know, by choice, I was going to get into watching all the Amicus films. And I got my hands on Torture Garden, and I could not believe I had never seen it before. I find it so charming. I think the carnival aspect is such a perfect choice. They're fun little stories. It just completely blew me away. And I even wondered if maybe if I hadn't been thinking of going after Amicus in general, I may have never watched this movie, because the concept of the title Torture Garden conjures up something, maybe an Eli Roth kind of movie. That
I hate to say this. The first thing I think of is there was a vinyl fetish magazine back in the early aughts called Torture Garden, and that's still going to be the only thing I think of. Am I?
Yeah, that would leave an impression on you. Yeah, it's a different impression than I had of Torture Garden, obviously, but I could see it leaving an impression on you and some marks.
No, but I mean, that's brilliant. See, but I didn't know about this. I was missing out on this particular fetish magazine. So I was thinking, when I hear Torture Garden, I was thinking, you know, this could be something like Motel Hell. It could be an Eli Roth kind of thing. It's none of that. And in fact, this movie that's the other interesting thing, is it's really quite a demure film. I mean, in a sense, Adam and I were talking, and I feel like when you think about, we watched last week, same director, we watched Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt came out in 1972. This movie came out in 1967. That's 5 years difference, and yet this movie may as well have come out in the 40s. I mean, it is so, like, there's a strange, antiquated feel about it, I think. And that's also not benefit.
It's also not, I think, as we pointed out last week, Tales from the Crypt has a certain nastiness to it, which this simply does. And there's some bad things that happen, and there's some bad people and stuff, you know, shit happens, but it's sort of oddly, well, I'll say seductive, but that's probably the wrong word, because that's almost too self-aware, but it's very sort of, you know, good-natured and sort of doesn't take itself particularly seriously, and it's sort of charming in its own way. Even when you have Palance, who really spends most of his time trying to light a pipe and get a 5-pound note out of his pocket and try and hand it off with a certain amount of aplomb, you know, and he largely stands and grins.
Well, and in fact, so I want to get right into the framing device.
Sure.
So yes, we've got the carnival thing, and one of the first things we notice is Jack Palance.
Palance.
Jack Palance.
Oh, Palance.
It is
all right,
Palance.
okay.
You say tomato, I say tomato.
Jack. First thing we notice is Jack Palance's hands, because he has this extremely dramatic way of giving money to the teller who is selling the tickets to go into the Torture Garden. You know, as he, you know, flips the money and then he opens his hand, and there's just a sort of Jack Palance is like overacting like crazy in this movie, and it's really delightful. It's nuts. He's breathing heavy. He has a faraway look all the time. It's
well, he's also fake English in a movie filled with real English people.
Yeah, that's
an English accent.
It is really true.
He wasn't even supposed to be in it, but the producers insisted on having Americans in it, so they cast him.
Wow.
And I don't know what the box office draw was for him, but what I really find amazing is these are all great little stories, you know. But what's so interesting is, like in Tales from the Crypt, but I think maybe a greater degree here. I love the fact that Peter Cushing and Jack Palance have the biggest slice of pie, you know, in this whole thing, which we'll get to. And this what you have in the wrapper is you have this extremely, I won't say reserved, because I don't think Jack Palance has ever been reserved, but he has, you know, a couple of notes that he is definitely hitting on the piano repeatedly, and then when he gets into his shtick and the actual story that he's in, he kind of blossoms in a very kind of frightening way as you sort of watch him on the screen.
Yes, and he's so quiet. He's so you're right. I say he's overacting because whenever the camera lands on him, he does stuff. He does business all the time. He's really dedicated.
He does.
He's focused. He's focused on the one thing from City Slickers. Jason says I'm only allowed to say that joke.
English people keep lighting pipes. English people light pipes. They wear tweed and they light pipes. They wear tweed and they smile uncomfortably and they light pipes. And they do a thing with a 5-pound note.
So right, he's very dramatic in paying anybody. So this opening thing, they go down and they meet up with Burgess Meredith, who again is he's taken extra money for them to go into the special exhibit in the back of the torture garden.
And then he burns the money immediately after the
He
does. I know. And you're sort of left with, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I guess we can guess that it's some kind of a sacrifice. I don't know.
Right. You could assume that, but I have a feeling. I thought that too. I thought, okay, it's a sacrifice, it's a thing, but I think it just means that it's not about the money. He could give a crap about it. He's about something else, which all sort of gets somewhat paid off later. But I mean, the truth of it is,
he just wants to make the world sing.
Here's my question about Burgess Meredith. I didn't even understand that.
It's not about the money. Never mind.
Yes.
Come on.
It's a song. It's a popular. It's a song that was popular with the young people about 10 years ago, Jason.
I don't even know if it goes back 10 years.
3 years. Tipius is 3. I'm like,
right.
I always assume that if I know about something, it's probably 10 years old.
10 years too late. That's very sweet. No, but okay. So here's my question. So Burgess Meredith, and this is the only reason I'm asking about the framing device, because I know it's not what we want to spend our time on. But Burgess Meredith says, I'm going to show you these things as you look into this statuette, Atropos, who holds the scales and cuts the thread of life. You're going to see a future so that you may get a warning and see the evil within you, so that you can change. Is that true? Do we think that he's showing them a possible future? And because this is different from what happened in Tales from the Crypt, where it was, I'm showing you actually what has already happened, and you guys are going to hell.
Yeah, you're already dead.
Yeah, I guess we can assume that he seems to be telling the truth, but does that jibe with any folkloric understanding of the devil that you guys are aware of? I'm not saying it's impossible.
I mean, when you think about it, the devil does ultimately serve kind of a purpose in the order of the cosmos. Like he punishes the wicked, So like if you cut out all the super idea of the devil as the ultimate supervillain, he's there to battle God. Like, and just get down to like the other aspects of the devil. The devil is there to punish the wicked. Then this does make kind of sense within that maybe he's trying to just keep the scales a little balanced.
Well, and the other thing is the fact that if you think about these stories, which we'll get into, they all deal in some way with avarice. They all deal with some sort of a thing. And what happens is, and this is all stated at some point, which we'll get to. I think this is done in a way where it has to be a choice, and I think he may show these things, but one person people will be horrified by this and go, no, I don't want to do this, and they might go off. But one person might be, wait a minute, what this is showing me is attractive, and I can avoid the pitfall of it because what's being offered to me is exactly what I want, which sort of is what happens. And then it sort of said, look, you have to give them a chance to sort of get away too, but it's such a big score at the end that you kind of go, oh, I see, it's a mechanism. It's still a seductive mechanism. If you think about it in the fiction of the rapper, obviously this is all just there so we can see great movies inside the rapper. But I think that's fundamentally it. I think it's just the fact that, yes, he's he's basically, Dr. Diablo, and which is not an extremely, it doesn't really cover a lot in terms of a moniker. It's kind of straightforward. But I think the idea is that it's meant to be a seduction. All these things have to deal with power or something. It has to deal with our money. And even though there are consequences in this, which is sort of the part of the horror, it's showing you the evil within you, some people want to embrace that evil. The majority of people, not so much, but there's always going to be that one. And I think that's what he's kind of going for. And that's what's, and then, of course, the fourth wall break kind of drives that point home. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, and actually, before we get to that, we're going to talk about there's one story in here where I'm not even sure, just like last week, I'm not sure what the warning is. I think that's part of the delight to me of Amicus, is at some point, at least one of the stories is not going to make much sense in the context of the frame.
This is the Steinway one?
Yes, which I love, by the way, love. I've heard people bitch about the Steinway. I love that story, but
I love it in the sense that it's like a night gallery story, or I love it in the sense that it's it's like the cars that eat people. I mean, there's a thing, and
before we get there, we should probably go back and take this because there's only 4 stories, so we'll get to Mr. Steinway pretty quickly. Enoch, the first one, is a story about the young man, greedy playboy, so-called, who comes to visit his dying uncle, who he is convinced is sitting on a stash of gold coins because he's very rich. He always pays in cash. He has a lovely cottage that he appears to have taken over from an old witch, and he pays for everything in antiquated gold coins. And Joya or Drew or Adam, does anybody want to explain what actually is going on with the uncle?
Okay, so this story is a little bit confusing to me because the uncle he's very wealthy, like you said, and the nephew just really wants to get some of this money, and so at some point he's basically the uncle is dying, and the guy's trying to get money from him while he's alive. He's like, I could use some money. And he's like, no, I don't have any money. He goes, everybody knows you've been paying for everything with these gold coins, and you have this house. He's like, no, you don't understand. It's not like that. And then he's like, it's just this horrible thing. And so then he has a heart attack, and rather than give him whatever tonic it is that he would benefit from, I guess,
Anti-heart attack.
Anti-heart attack vodka. He decides to let him go ahead and die. And now he's going to go find out where this money is. So he goes down to the basement, and he's in the room, the guy's room, and he finds this panel on the floor that takes him to a basement. And down there he starts digging and finds a tomb. I mean, a casket, a casket, and he opens it up, and this cat jumps out. And
wait! It's a headless skeleton. And
I was about to say, there's a headless skeleton in there.
A black
and the cat was
cat
where the head
jumps
was.
out. Apparently, and smoke rises from where the cat or the head was once upon a time.
Right. So my question at this point is, how long? When did he do this? Did he just finish doing this? Did he just bury this cat? Or has the cat been living under there for a long time?
I've thought about this. I've actually given this some thought.
Okay, so explain it to me. Because yes, he digs a hole.
Yes.
Down in the hole, he finds a casket. In the casket, which he opens up, that was under the dirt, he finds a cat and a headless skeleton.
And the cat communicates telepathically with him.
Yes. Okay. One of the advantages to having seen this when I was 6 years old is it's given me a tremendous amount of time to sort of think about this. So I'm going to give you the fruit of my misspent youth, which is simply this. One is, I want to point out, he didn't murder his uncle. He was trying to basically pressure his uncle to tell him where it is by keeping his magical anti-heart attack vodka away from him. And then he just went too far, and he died unexpectedly. So it was really more cruelty than out-and-out murder. So he hasn't gone to murder yet, 'cause that's an important step later that he has to cross. The second thing is the fact that, it turns out the cat is actually a familiar of the witch, and in this particular case, we're treating, physical form and spiritual form sort of interchangeably. My belief is that somehow not the cat itself, but which is the embodiment of the spirit, but the spirit of the familiar, the demon, is actually, was actually somehow constrained within the coffin, and the cat itself hasn't been like sitting there eating the entire body all these years. I think it was a number of years ago, certainly when the uncle was more vital, before he had heart trouble, and I think that he found a way to sort of, make a deal and then trick the spirit, and the spirit was buried. And then when the coffin is opened, basically once it's unearthed, then I think that it took a form, kind of in that moment.
The cat's called not Balthazar, but Balthazar, as they pronounce it. And but I'm wondering, did I miss a line? Did they ever say that there were a number of dead, like headless bodies back in the day when the uncle was? I mean, because the thing about this cat is that he makes you give him bodies so he can eat their heads. And so I'm curious, like, was there, because this guy had to kill like a whole bunch of people in a very short amount of time.
Right. Well, the cat was obviously extremely hungry.
Yeah, because he's been underground, I guess. But I wonder how many bodies the uncle had to give him.
I'm sure it had to be a few, but I have a feeling he was much better at hiding this, obviously, than the nephew, because he's terrible at it.
The nephew gets busted.
The uncle seems a little bit more strong-willed than the...
Completely. He might have done whatever. But, I mean, I love the fact that we've just glossed over the fact that we have a head-eating cat, and nobody seems particularly concerned about it.
The important thing to remember is it's not really a cat. It's a
demon.
I
understand that. I understand that. I just love
it. Just takes the form of a cat. I find this story to be... I find this story to be the one that's actually kind of frightening out of this lot, and it's very H.P. Lovecraft to me.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
Somebody pointed out that this cat is actually a female cat because it's a tortoiseshell cat, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Yes,
Drew,
more.
That is a really weird-looking cat.
It really is. And it will ruin you from liking cats.
The way that they focus in on the eyes, for some reason I really was getting a vibe from what's the Dean Stockwell Lovecraft movie that we saw?
Oh, you're talking about Dunwich Horror.
Yes. For some reason, I actually was getting it's funny that Drew would say that about Lovecraft, because I was getting kind of a Dunwich Horror vibe here. That this thing, once it's unleashed, it's like, and it can take over your brain. I mean, it's almost less like I like your point. It's because it is less like your standard demon and more like some kind of crazy alien consciousness that's, as it happens, is only interested in getting you to kill people and so it can eat their heads.
Well, it's funny. I mean, he makes a deal, and then apart from the then he pressures the guy into it. It's sort of like, okay, well, so he makes a deal, and then he pressures him into it by taking over his head, his mind.
Yes.
But if you think about it, it was the most economical way, I think, to get any of this stuff across. It's so cheap, and yet somehow it all works. You put some peanut butter in the cat's mouth so he moves his tongue, and you get one with particularly large eyes, and you move the 1K so that the light hits it just a certain way. It's as if to destroy any love of cats for anybody under the age of 9, like myself. and then you have the main character, fake a schism, and then talk as if the cat is talking to him, and he's repeating it, and you go, my God, that was so cheap, and it worked.
Yeah,
it just worked. But the thing is, he goes, the first thing he does. I mean, I think Julia's right. I mean, the guy, he tears the place apart, he digs up the coffin, and then basically the cat goes, hey, look, I'm going to serve you, but you have to do some things for me. I'm going to give you the witch's gold. Apparently, the witch's gold is in this place. It's not like he's just conjuring gold, which would have been a different matter. Then you
I got the impression he was conjuring gold. I didn't.
No, it was already buried, and it was already in this little treasure chest. And then I love that after the first kill, the cat just kind of throws some gold coins at him.
He does, like drops.
There you go.
And there's no way. You go, how does this cat? Does he poop out the coins? Because there's no way. It's like 5-6 coins. How's the cat going to carry that? He's not wearing a vest.
He's familiar. He probably magically carried them.
He conjures it. I know.
I think he's conjuring it. Yes, I really believe that.
Although, the thing is, I think the expectation is that I always thought, like I've thought about this for 40 years. I always thought that my life is a wreck. I always thought that the uncle sort of knew where the chest was because he had, he of course he'd been given a chest before, knew the witch had gold, and it was able to live on this gold for however long, which is why I didn't think it was conjured necessarily. But it was a terrible price that he didn't necessarily want to get his nephew or anybody else into, and he obviously had a huge burden. But I really kind of thought that these coins just all existed. It probably works a whole lot better if the cat is conjuring it, because then it means that he's just constantly rewarding whoever it is who has to now go out and get bodies so he can eat the head. Now, what's interesting is, this is really all about, if you served a witch before who must have done terrible things, and then the uncle before who must have done something, God knows what, but one would assume is probably the same thing, you would kind of think that if the cat can take over people's minds and do a bunch of stuff, and things, I'm not sure the cat really needs a guy to, go and get him somebody so he can eat his head. But it must be this thing where he tries to get them to cross a line, which must be one of the reasons, because of avarice, they're willing to cross a line, and not just, like in the case of this guy who causes his uncle to die but not murders him directly, crosses the line into murder because of avarice, and this is the function of the spirit.
Yeah, in fact, I think the heads probably, to your point, I think the heads aren't even important. I think it's there, but I think that, or rather, that's an important detail, but what I mean is this demon is actually, I think what it mainly collects is corrupted people. That's the murders are just the sort of the sustenance that the cat is taking, but I think its main purpose is to go around the earth, flashing gold coins and corrupting human beings.
Yeah, I just can't wait for the crossover with the Leprechaun franchise.
In space.
I've never seen a single Leprechaun movie.
Really?
In my life.
Yeah.
The only one
next year it's on.
The only one that I saw was Leprechaun 4 in space, and I guarantee you it will ruin you. So,
It'd be kind of fun to do a retrospective of just movies where monsters go into space. Not monsters from space, but Earth monsters in space.
Hellraiser, Bloodlines, Jason X, Leprechaun in space. Am I forgetting anything?
I'm trying to think if you forget. Oh, Dracula 3000.
Oh,
yeah. Okay, there you go.
That movie has nothing going for it save perhaps Erika Eleniak.
And by the way, speaking of Dracula, there's a point that I want to sort of bring up, which is if you think about it, if you look at not necessarily Stoker, I don't think, but I think that there was some subsequent stuff. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, or where this comes from, but there was the notion was that one of Dracula's key sort of features in his deal with the devil for eternal life was to then be a conduit through which he could get, more damned souls.
I don't think I don't think it's explicit in the book, but it's a perfectly logical thought. I also would kind of want to check out that Egyptian pole star story that Stoker did, because it might have some stuff kind of like this. So here's as far as the corrupting alien influence. You know what else is like that? The one with the frozen alien caveman guy in
Horror Express.
Horror Express. Yeah. That's another concept. But I got one more thought about this, and then we should move on to the next one. And that is that there's no way in hell. It seems to me that the cat the cat clearly likes to collect corrupt souls, but there's no way that he expected he'd have to churn through this guy in like 3 days. So it must be that the stupid, like, spoiled playboy here was a particularly bad person to possess, because he's just so completely out of control. I think the cat probably needs somebody who puts up something of a fight. You know, this guy has a weak mind.
It's also possible that he was just super hungry after all this time. Like maybe they should just had the one. No, but he actually didn't do very well with even the one body, the first
He
body.
doesn't hide anything. He's a zombie.
No, he's terrible at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is one thing which I want to bring up, which is interesting, and that is, and this happens in each of the movies, and that is, you know, when the nurse first shows up, you know, she has the face of Atropos for just a moment, and that's a consistent thing throughout each of these movies. There is the face of the mechanical mannequin who, you know, will actually...
They usually blink away, right? I mean, whenever they see that image.
Well, except for the painting or the picture or whatever it was that last one.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. So the thing with that is that when they go into that back room at the torture garden, the people will see their story by looking into the shears that this mannequin type figure is holding, and then at the end of the story she'll clip a thread, which I don't really know what the point of that is, but
it's the thread of life. It's purely symbolic.
Okay.
But the other thing I want to mention in this story, and it's true for all of them, but I noticed it immediately here, is how much the music here sounds like Dracula. You know, this is so much like the soundtrack of the other, you know, major Hammer.
Which Dracula? Like
I'm thinking Dracula, 1958.
Brown.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that it sounds so much like Dracula. I was wondering if it was library music at times.
No, apparently it's original James Bernard music, and he's here writing. You know, and it's just that his music often sounds very similar to other scores of his. But it's original stuff. Now, other things sound quite weird. Like he's writing with another person, Don Banks. They open up with that strange carnival music, which is the weirdest, most unappetizing carnival music you ever heard.
It really is awful.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's a bad composition. It's unnerving, but it definitely, if you were walking through a carnival and that music was playing...
No, I don't think it's that unnerving. I think they intended for it to be unnerving, but I actually think it's really boring. Because, I mean, because it's supposed to be, I think somebody said, I want you to do carnival music, but put it in a minor key so it sounds creepy, and then somehow they just botched that up, and it's kind of dull, I thought.
So that's not working for you, and I don't know how the job divides up between Don Banks and James Bernard, but I will say the rest of this stuff sounds so much like one of the Hammer Draculas or Frankenstein movies. It wouldn't be, Drew, to your point, it wouldn't be any kind of library from Hammer, because this is everybody's walking across the street and working at a different studio. It's just Bernard kind of doing his usual stuff, which is, it makes it feel to an American who doesn't, you know, I wasn't alive to like feel the difference between these. It makes it feel like a Hammer film at those moments. So anyway, Terror Over Hollywood is the next one, which is we have the story of the American girl who is, you know, in the room of Atropos. Her story is that she's going to go back to quote unquote Hollywood, where she's going to be an incredible bitch to her roommate and steal her roommate's opportunity to, like, her roommate, who is this sweet British girl, for reasons unexplained. Her roommate is going to go out on the town with her one good dress to, like, have dinner with this lecherous older guy. And
a producer of some sort.
Right, and that's what starlets do, apparently. And our young starlet decides she's going to go in her stead. And that sets off this whole sort of story about her, you know, entering the Hollywood scene and getting more and more famous and finding out the secrets of what keeps the so-called top 10, basically the top tier of talent, what keeps them, you know, on top of the game and keeping everybody else down. And before I give away,
and looking young,
and looking young-ish, I think they've surely got like some sort of like aging program built in, because if it's a joke about the real world of Hollywood, people do age. They just age apparently slower than everybody else. But nobody would ever look at like Steven Spielberg, who is definitely still, he would be one of these secret
the top 10, or whatever they call it, the 10. Something. What do they call them? The top? They didn't call them the top 10.
They call them the top 10. Yeah, they just call them the top 10. And Steven Spielberg would definitely be one, but he definitely doesn't look like he looked when he made Jaws. So but you do kind of suspect. What's his name from? Oh God, my brain just worked. Rob Lowe. Rob Lowe is definitely one. Yeah, no, I can buy that. Before we go into anything else, I just have to say the weirdest thing about this story that unnerved me, or rather, it just didn't work for me, I guess is the right thing, because it wasn't scary at all, is this does not look like Hollywood in any sense. It took me a while to understand that they were supposed to be in Hollywood, even though everybody's doing an American accent and stuff like that. And the reason why is that when you see this actress moving from like her apartment to the studios to the bars and restaurants and like driving around and stuff, everything is so indoors and dark, that it feels like at least New York. Somehow.
Yeah, it's mostly like New York.
Yeah, because in Hollywood, the one thing that I can say as somebody who doesn't live in Hollywood but goes there more often than makes any sense is that the sun is everywhere. I mean, no matter where you are, that sun comes in through the cracks. Everything is bright. Even at night, there's this feeling of like brightness around, and there's never a moment when this thing feels like anything like California.
Well, and the other thing about that, the other thing which you're sort of touching on, and it may be less about budget and less about them not really capturing Hollywood, and that is, what's so funny is everybody in this, right, is sort of, it's almost like they're noirish. You've got the actor who isn't eating anything, and he basically has placed some bets, and two mooks show up to rub him out, and they basically do, and you go, this doesn't seem like an LA thing. This seems kind of like it's a noirish. It looks like I'm sort of watching Maltese Falcon in a funny way, and everyone's kind of it's everything's at night, and I was sort of beginning to think that.
It's funny, what this kept making me think of in an odd way was the first Clayface episode of Batman the Animated Series, because it's dealing with like these Hollywood types, but like it's got this very fictional version of America and like Hollywood America going on in there, and it's Gotham City is of course not a real place. It's just an idea, and this is somebody's idea of Hollywood. It's not. It's and it as such it didn't really bother me. I guess the same way that it bothers you guys. I mean, I've spent my fair share of time out that way, but I don't know, like for some reason it didn't take me out of the story.
It didn't bother me. I mean, they spent most of their time on a set, and the set is where it is you want it to be, quite honestly. Apart from the bodaciously small apartment.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. The small apartments that they're in, that does remind me of small apartments that we saw like in Butterflies Are Free and other stuff of the period, so you can totally buy that. Of course, that's New York. I mean, if there are, to your point about noir, if you wanted to make L.A. noir, there's plenty of it. I mean, like some of those Mike Hammer pictures took place in L.A. The problem is, of course, it's very expensive to go outside, and I totally get that. And part of me, to be honest with you, I guess I sound like I'm complaining about this, and I said it didn't work, but the fact is I find this sort of charming because it's so weird. It's just odd. So I take it back. I'm not disturbed. I'm just it's a strange concoction, and I like the way you said it, Drew. That it's somebody's curious artistic rendering of California. Cool stuff. I don't know if I have anything else to comment on this particular story because I want to get to Mr. Steinway, and we're definitely going long.
Well, I think the thing that we haven't really gotten into the meat of is this actress. The actor gets shot in the head. She sees him get shot in the head. They take him out to this weird Nazi-esque doctor who says, "Oh no, he's fine." And, he's resting. He shows up back onto the set on Monday, and she's like, "Oh, well, I love you." And he's like, "Oh, I can't love you. I can't love anybody." And
he doesn't eat meals. He doesn't eat food.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never eats, and he says it's because he's watching his weight. And, at one point, she gets into a fight with him, and she scrapes at him and it pulls away some skin, and just like in the Terminator or something, we see some metal poking out. And what's the reveal is that these certain people in Hollywood have essentially become androids or cyborgs or something, but it removes your need to eat or sleep, or you never age. You can constantly work, but you don't need to eat, sleep, or
live for the adulation of the crowd. Isn't that a crazy idea that these are androids? First of all, it's this clever thing about LA, right? About Hollywood, is that these people don't eat. So that's a comment on people's obsession with thinness. But they don't eat. They live for the adulation of the crowd. But in exchange for fame, they've given up all the things that the rest of us love.
Well, and for beauty, eternal beauty.
Yeah.
The tragic thing, the horror part of this, is that she doesn't choose that. She doesn't
actually want it. They
doesn't want it. They force it on her.
But and the thing is, everyone's guilty of something in this movie. In her case, she said she was willing to do anything to get to the top. Of course, it started with, obviously burning her roommate's dress, and it's kind of bitchy, but not really quite as nothing deserving to be an android over.
No,
but,
it's not a capital crime. That's right.
It really isn't. But she demonstrates, a certain amount of, we'll say, over and above the sort of typical actress, who is trying to make it in Hollywood, or even in this, fictional version of Hollywood. But she demonstrates a willingness to do, and she says she will do anything to get where she needs to go. So, and that's really the only thing, quite honestly, she's guilty of, apart from asking a shit ton of questions to the wrong people, which ultimately gets her an invitation to the doctor and being turned into a cyborg herself to keep the secret. Because otherwise they would just kill her like they killed her.
I really love that, because it almost seems like, a vilification of people who get cosmetic surgery, which I honestly think is a little overblown in real life. I feel like people get so bent out of shape over something that's really nobody's business ultimately. But as a satirical dig at Hollywood, it did absolutely work in the context of this story.
I'm glad to hear you say that, just because it's a different perspective. I hadn't really thought about it, but you're totally right. If somebody wants to mess with her face, let them do it. I think that's.
Who cares? It's not like you're out robbing a liquor store or murdering people. To me, it's the same thing as getting a tattoo. It's nobody's business except the person that's doing it. But for some reason, we really like to tear those people a new asshole online, and God help if anybody, any woman or man or anybody in Hollywood does it, they get torn apart by regular people,
right.
And it's a bit ridiculous.
Or judged because judged because they don't, because they are aging.
Yeah, it's a catch 22.
I think the most important thing in life is to be ruled by compassion. So probably that would leave me no place to pick on anybody, no matter what they choose to.
So you're not voting for Donald Trump then?
I'm not even going to comment on Donald Trump on this show. Are you kidding me?
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
I'm going to let the primary work itself out, and then we'll deal with it in the general.
I couldn't help it. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. You're right.
I didn't mean to open Pandora's box.
No. You're not hurting my feelings. It's fine. So, yeah, it's funny. We have listeners overseas, and I'm wondering if they're like, who the fuck is Donald Trump?
No, everybody knows Donald Trump is at this point.
Oh, my God, yes.
I mean, London is voting to, like, ban him.
He's probably a cyborg.
Not with that.
Yeah. I have theories about what moves Trump, but we'll do it.
Yeah, we can do a different horror movie about him.
Yeah, with your political podcast.
Let's talk about killer pianos. I'm sorry, but I brought it up.
Oh my gosh, the piano story.
Okay, in the piano.
Yeah.
So by the way, we switched back to Burgess Meredith. He's now wearing a black suit with a white tie and a black fedora.
He looks so much like a one of the gangsters in Some Like It Hot at this time.
I agree.
Only
with you.
color, of course, but
it's like he's gonna sing "Luck Be a Lady" tonight. Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love his facial expressions in this. Like, there's a point where I can't remember the exact line, but he says, he starts saying, "Evil, I prefer evil," and he just gets this maniacal grin on his face. And Burgess Meredith really rocks in this movie. I love him from Rocky and of course the Batman show, but I really this may actually be my new favorite Burgess Meredith performance.
It's a tour de force.
We should go through pretty quick on this piano one because there's really not a lot to it, and it's getting running long. But this one is super simple. It's actually very predictable. I mean, it was the one story that I was like, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Very pretty girl, Barbara Ewing is her name. Introducing
Barbara Ewing.
Yeah.
She falls in love with this pianist. And the pianist has a piano that he calls Euterpe, which means muse, musical muse. And he's got a painting of his mom who's died, and she looks just like what are we calling the figure? Atropos. And basically he's not dated, like in a long time, if ever, and the piano is possessed, and that's pretty clear. I don't know how it becomes like the first thing that happens, but it's pretty clear almost immediately. The piano.
I think that like the top part collapses. Well,
I think it was clear before even that. It was clear before even that happened. I think it's because she said that why are you talking to yourself, and like all these things like where it's clear that he's been talking to the piano and he's given the piano personality. So you kind of already think that's weird.
What's she guilty of exactly? I mean, I had a little trouble sort of.
So this is the one that doesn't fit.
Does she come between them?
Nobody in this movie. It's not like the one last week where people did horrible things.
No.
In this movie, only the first guy, only the one who's killing all the people. And I guess really that. I mean, I guess Jack Palance too because he murders somebody. But the two middle stories. Neither one of the two middle stories are really horrible people. And but she is not. I guess I should say the two girls. Really, they're not. They don't seem to be horrible people.
Evidently,
she just is trying to control his life, I guess, and take over take him away from his passion, which is the music. That's kind of if that's the story. If that's what the morality tale that we're supposed to get. I know that being married to a writer, that you don't get to decide that you're more important than the spouse's passion if they're an artist.
I don't even think that.
I learned that a long time ago.
It makes no sense at all. It's a great story, but there's no evil here because she doesn't actually intend to harm his music career.
No, she's not evil, but I'm just saying that's the thing.
I completely believe her when she's like, look, I'm not trying to live off of his career.
But let's think of it. Don't think of it as his career. Think of it as his woman, his wife, his girlfriend.
So he's coming.
Piano,
she's breaking up a relationship. Is really what it is.
Yeah, the piano is his wife. It's his love. So basically, if you look at it that way, then this
which
other
is actually it's actually an extension of his mother, which of course, not to get all psychological, but the piano is an extension of his mother more than a wife, and so
is the evil to be warned against that she has made the mistake of thinking that she can change somebody else? Right. That in other words, if we subscribe to a view, which I generally do not, but if we subscribe to a view that the things that are visited upon us are largely because of very poor choices on our own, does that mean that the terrible things that happened to her are because she did not choose wisely in who to be with?
I don't know. I don't think that she deserves it. I think she's just happy.
I don't think with this one we don't have to look that deeply into this one. It's an entertaining story. The other ones are far better examples. I think the most you could say is, one should be very careful when coming between a boy and his mother, even if his mother is, his dead mother comes forth in the form of a Steinway.
But it is scary, though. I found myself scared.
It is scary, especially because as soon as they put she brought her framed picture over. I was like, well, that picture's going to get thrown on the floor.
Oh, immediately.
But so that kind of thing. But then so she's convinced him, and then we should dismiss the story pretty quickly. But she's convinced him to go on a trip with her and cancel his concert, and then he's going to go pack, and the piano is playing itself, which she had already heard earlier, I guess, that was the case, but she wasn't sure because he'd been at the door too quickly. And so she hears the piano playing itself. She goes in to look at the piano. Piano's not where it's supposed to be. Piano has moved across the room.
Yeah, the piano's hiding behind the door, which I think
it's hiding behind the door. And so the grand piano slams the door and just starts. And this is a little silly because she really could have run around, but I guess it was going to chase her all over the room anyway. The point is, it chases her around the room and out the window, and she goes flying through the window and dies. And then, he just sits back down at the piano and he's just playing it.
Yep.
And that's the end of that story.
You feel terrible for her. I really love the daring. It seems to be just like a writer's dare. Like, I'll bet you I could write a story where a grand piano hides behind a door and then pushes a girl out a window. and there are those two arguing Muppets who also write screenplays for a living. It was like, I'd like to see that, and so they gave us this story.
Yeah, Robert Bloch got a case of whiskey that day.
Yes. And, Robert Bloch, man, and thank you for that transition, because we come now, all these stories were done Robert Bloch. Like, where the next couple of movies will be adaptations from EC Comics, this one is Robert Bloch just contributing stories. I don't know how many of these were previously published short stories, but I know the next one is, because The Man Who Collected Poe is a short story that I read in school and just adored. I just thought it was one of the greatest horror stories I'd ever read. It was really, really clever. And I had no idea, none, until I watched this movie a couple of years ago, and they were starting it, and I was like, holy crap, this is the man who collected Poe, And so this one is also maybe the longest story in here. It's just like with Tales from the Crypt, the stories start simple, they get more complex. And in this one, you've got two main characters and a whole lot of Poe stuff going on, because you got Jack Palance, who is an obsessive collector of Poe memorabilia, and Peter Cushing, who is, in theory, an even more obsessive collector of Poe memorabilia, who has his mansion, his Virginia mansion in the United States. So, yes, Jack Palance plays an Englishman who's going to go to the United States home of Peter Cushing. That doesn't make any sense at all, and it doesn't even matter. I think it's because Bloch is adapting his story and it's take place in Virginia, and so that's the way it's got to go. It doesn't even matter. You get there, and they're drinking a great deal. Jack Palance is trying to get the secrets out of, just all the various extraordinarily expensive collection pieces that Peter Cushing has, and they both know they're sort of trading Poe details back and forth, as a means of just indicating constantly to us and to one another that they know more about Edgar Allan Poe than anybody. And as the evening wears on, I really believe that we were about to see like a Cask of Amontillado kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where, didn't it have that feel to you? Like somebody was going to get walled in? But that isn't what happened.
Well, someone is walled in.
Yeah, but I mean, Poe, I think to an extent, Robert Bloch, he's playing some notes that'll remind us of a Cask of Amontillado. Hey, come downstairs. I got some cool stuff to show you. We're drunk.
You're drunk. Yeah, right.
Yeah. See, he knows that we're going to be thinking of that. They go downstairs, but what he finds is this amazing thing, which is unpublished Edgar Allan Poe manuscripts. So now we're like, wow, maybe this stuff is like left over from the old days, from somehow Poe never published it, and Palance is super excited. But then, and he can't buy it. It won't be sold. But then he looks at the paper and he realizes, wait a minute, this was written in longhand like last year. This is new paper, and Peter Cushing is very demure about the secret of how it is that he's got these stories. And long story short, because it involves, first it's like, well, I did some magic and I can bring people back to life, but it's not quite clear what's going on until Palance murders Peter Cushing so that he can get through a locked door. And once behind the locked door, he finds a little writing table and Edgar freaking Allan Poe. He is the man who collected Poe, and he literally collected Edgar Allan Poe and has stuck him in his basement where Edgar Allan Poe, under some strange demonic deal, has to keep churning out short stories. And
he says he's like, I'm stuck here. The only way I can die because I made this deal with the devil is by fire.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then so then Jack Palance sets him on fire, and he's like, but the only thing is now that you're going to be the one who's going to be slave to the...
Yeah,
right. Which just goes to show that Edgar Allan Poe is a total dick.
Yeah.
just to put any sort of speculation to rest, hey, the only way you can release me from my terrible existence is by setting me on fire. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention beforehand that you actually are going to take my place in a weird way.
But I got to say, though, Jack Palance doesn't seem to have any problem with any of this.
No,
he's really quite cheerful about the whole thing.
And that's the really interesting thing about it, which carries over into the wrapper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so are you talking about his reaction, which is one of bliss? There's almost a sort of like St. Francis euphoria over the fact that he's going to burn, I guess, like the House of Usher. I think there's
Edgar Allan Poe, or
it's weird. It's so strange. And
I don't understand why Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, I guess Edgar Allan Poe was just kind of a miserable SOB to begin with, but his existence doesn't seem too horrid. He's just writing, and to a writer, that's unless you're really lazy, that's not that bad.
I mean, it's an old variation on hell to like have the thing that you want and then have to do it for all eternity with no variation. I mean, that's a common thing.
Like the cookies with no milk.
Right, or that you you love chewing tobacco, and so now you have to chew lots and lots and lots of chewing tobacco. I mean, there's all kinds. So I can kind of get the notion that this could be a punishment. The other punishment, of course, would be that Poe's a crazy writer, but he's mostly obsessed with beautiful young women on the edge of death.
Girl, yeah.
So to be lonely forever would probably be something else. Poe also is probably doomed not to be very happy no matter what you make him do. And
well, wait a second. I mean, let's not miss the point that basically he was dead and had crumbled, and Peter Cushing's father, I want to say, or had sort of been done a lot of work with the occult, and Cushing then managed to reanimate the dust. So basically he's pulled out of kind of wherever he is, and basically it's like, okay, you're going to, no shower for you because you're super dusty, and you're just going to sit there and just keep writing. And so he's sort of in this weird existence where he's sort of been pulled back, and now he's, whatever the deal is. It can't be an amazing existence. It can't be, he's stuck in a closet and he's like doing this thing. So I don't know. I think even if he were like the happiest guy in the world, I think under these circumstances, he'd be like, will somebody kind of, hit the switch on this? Because this is terrible.
Yeah, someone set me free from this. But, that's not, to me, so absolutely, you have that totally right. But to me, what's going on, there's so much going on. Robert Bloch, the other stories were quite simple. This one has just so much to say. There's the stuff about the nature of obsessive collectors who have no sense of, any proportion. You could trap another person's soul just for your collection. You could have original art that you lock away from the rest of the world that you don't care because you're going to guard it just for your collection. You're willing to kill other people, just for this collectible material.
Are they going to remake this in 10 years about a Star Wars fan, and it'll be the man who collected George Lucas?
Man, you totally could. There's something to it. So Palance kind of gets it because he takes a part that could be quite dull. If you imagine, I don't know, Christopher Lee, God love him. If Christopher Lee were playing somebody who was very excited about collecting Edgar Allan Poe memorabilia, he would be, however he would be. But Jack Palance is on the verge of sexual reverie all the time while he's talking about Edgar Allan Poe.
It's really frightening to see.
It's weird. There's just a complete perverted strangeness about the way that Jack Palance just carries on about Edgar Allan Poe and everything about him. And that's all Palance.
He's a fanboy. Have you met fanboys?
I guess so.
They're usually kind of pervy.
Yeah.
but he also demonstrates because this is the biggest slice of cake in the whole movie, and he is delivering such a we'll just call it gleeful performance.
Yeah.
Of ecstatic in the truest sense. But it also makes him. He demonstrates as he's smiling in the flames. Now able to smoke his cigarette without having to light it. He demonstrates something which is very interesting, and that is, as we kind of get to the wrapper, that of all the various people, apparently one or two of them not particularly deserving of the fate that they received, one guy who might turn away from sort of whatever the evil within him is. We're taken to the wrapper, and the fifth guy who's sort of been with them, who isn't. It's almost like I saw that and I went, well, are we going to get a fifth movie? No.
Yeah.
No.
Michael, you're talking about Michael Ripper.
Yep.
Right. Who basically
the one and only.
Who basically flips out, grabs the shears, which have been like a point of interest throughout this entire movie, and rather than be subjected to this and this insult anymore, or he gets this wild-eyed look and he plunges them through the heart of Burgess Meredith, and everyone runs away, and then it's revealed that he was his man. He was Diablo's man inside to sort of to drive them off, or to sort of really make that a thrill. And that's, you kind of go, oh, this is extremely clever. But the guy who's left behind is
Jack Palance. Yeah, it's Jack
Palance.
Yeah, Palance. Yeah.
Who recognizes Dr. Diablo for who he is. He believes and he's gleeful about that. Even.
Well, I think he's looking forward to finding the damn Poe manuscripts.
And I think that's it too.
Don't get it.
He's that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go.
And then he lights Burgess Meredith's pipe, and then he walks out, and Burgess Meredith looks at the camera and turns into the devil.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
which is a corny ending, but it's kind of awesome.
Well, he basically says, we will make a deal, not now, but soon. So he's ecstatic. Palance is ecstatic, and he leaves. And then basically, you have this whole bit where he was speaking to his man, just the idea of, this is how we do it now. We show people this thing, and some, they have to be given a choice, and some might save themselves from this. But there's always going to be that one, and that one happens to be Jack Palance, which he completely, demonstrates. And then you get the reveal, which you've sort of known for a while, but it's one more costume change, and they really drive this thing home because, as he turns to the camera, and they do like this quick dissolve with a makeup change, and they superimpose flames over him. That he definitely not since The Devil's Advocate have you seen, basically this reveal where he just breaks the fourth wall and who's next? Maybe you, and you go, okay, this is an Amicus picture. This is an Amicus.
I love The Devil's Advocate, by the way. That's a fun movie.
Yeah,
The Devil's Advocate.
It's a great movie.
The Devil's, the one with Al Pacino.
Oh yeah, of course.
No, the Devil. Actually, she's saying The Devil's Abacus, which is a lesser known picture.
No,
the
not.
Shaw Brothers picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Devil's Advocate.
But Robert Bloch. I had no idea that Robert Bloch was this interesting. I mean, I had read, of course, The Man Who Collected Poe, although I'd forgotten it until I watched the story. But I always associated Robert Bloch with the guy who wrote Psycho. But this is
and which, by the way, was great. I mean, you had this interesting thing where he's also a sci-fi writer and a bunch of things. Later, he wrote a lot of novelizations, Star Trek novelizations and stuff like that. But if you think about it, remember Ray Bradbury wrote, Moby Dick, the one with Gregory Peck, and you just don't you don't usually think, oh, Ray Bradbury, and you don't think, Richard Basehart and Gregory Peck, a very classic sort of movie. And this is an extremely entertaining movie. Particularly it's of its type and of its time, but it's extremely entertaining and sort of endeared Robert Bloch to me kind of for a long time.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, he's part of that generation who started with the pulps and just kept working, and I know that in the 80s he wrote Psycho too. I mean, I know he was still doing a lot of stuff well into his old age, and then he died, it says here, in 1994. I guess we should get our final thoughts, and while you're doing that, hopefully I'll think about what I'm going to endorse this week. Final thoughts. We're going the same way as before. Adam, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. Adam, Torture Garden. Such an exciting one.
Listen, I'll be really brief. I love this movie. That's pretty much the long and short of it. If you think about the way the thing is shot, some of the shots are really interesting, but most of the camera work, the interesting camera work, seems to happen in the wrapper, which is by far part of the most charming part of the whole thing. I think the majority of the stories are particularly effective. I think Steinway is a little more problematic, Mr. Steinway, but it's certainly entertaining, again, in the same way the Cars That Eat People or Giant Spider or The Killer Bed from, I don't know, any kind of a night gallery kind of sort of giant object eating people or pushing people out of a door or out of a window, anything like that. But in general, I think the best part, really, the most gleeful part, is the wrapper, and I think it makes this movie stand out, certainly among the Amicus movies and above a lot of other movies sort of this time and place.
Very cool, Julia. Any final thoughts on Torture Garden?
I don't think I have anything additional. I like the cast. I like the stories. Yeah, it was a good little picture, and I enjoyed watching it.
Very cool. Drew, final thoughts.
This is a neat discovery. I like that we're digging into something, a subject matter that I'm not overtly familiar with for a change, because I'm not really super studied up on the entirety of the Amicus catalog. So this was neat. I hate to say it, but I would say this was a neat movie. I think I'll be one that I'll revisit here and there in coming years.
Very cool. And my final thought is almost exactly what Adam said, which is that this, ever since I saw this movie, which was late in the game, but ever since I saw this movie, it's just one of my favorite horror anthologies. So I really love
All right, quick question. So, okay, this, or if you put, can you stack this against a Mario Bava picture?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, it's certainly better than Bear in Blood. Are you thinking of Black Sabbath?
Yes, I am.
I like this movie better than Black Sabbath.
I do too.
But I haven't watched Black Sabbath in a while. So I mean, but I remember the Verdelak being a really great story, and I remember the one about the old lady.
Oh no, that's great. I mean, that's all great stuff and stays with you forever. It's another one that I saw when I was a little kid, probably too young, and that made an impression on me. Again, misspent youth. But it's interesting when you compare these two movies. Well, that's more of a picture.
Boy, they go together really well, though, because if you could watch this and Black Sabbath back-to-back, I think that would be really great, because they're both in Technicolor. They're both right around 1960. That was, I think, I'm going to guess, like 65.
And they're kind of frightening.
Yeah, and they're good. They're spooky. They're scary. They're not like, I didn't even know what. This is a discussion for another evening, but horror has become almost more of an artistic sensibility for me, less than, I'm almost never frightened per se, but it's more of just sort of a concept or a sensibility. And I don't know, maybe that's a failing, maybe I'm watching the wrong stuff, except for that I really love this stuff. So I don't know. But yes, I agree. Black Sabbath and Torture Garden go together beautifully. All right. Does anybody have anything that they would like to endorse, anything they've been reading in the last week or watching or listening to that they're like, you totally have to read or watch or listen to this? Not Adele, because you did Adele last week, Julia. All right, go ahead.
I need to plug Krampus. I feel like this is a Christmas movie for our troubled times. I caught it at a matinee with my wife yesterday. We had a nice little. We kept jokingly calling it a holiday because we went out for brunch, and then we went to the Blue Genie Art Gallery, and then we went over and saw Krampus, and it is wonderfully done. It is directed by Michael Dougherty, who also did Trick or Treat, which is of course the Halloween-themed anthology movie that we referenced earlier. It is about the now becoming very famous European Christmas demon of Alpine folklore. And the movie nicely invokes everything from Gremlins to Army of Darkness to even things as left field as Labyrinth, while still managing to be its own thing. And it's also, the other thing that was just so wonderful about it, most of the creature effects are completely practical. There's there's a few, there's some CGI gingerbread men, but most of the screens are most of the monsters are actually on screen, including a completely nightmarish hybrid of a boa constrictor and a jack-in-the-box. And believe me, you have not lived till you've seen a 10-year-old girl getting eaten by a jack-in-the-box. This is it.
Usually it's the other way around.
Yeah, this is very, very, very well done film. It's very atmospheric. It's well acted. It is hysterical, which is what I was not expecting. Plus, I just feel like it actually had a lot to say about the sort of culture war that's going on in American society right now. It's very nicely satirical. So, Lord knows we only have a few more weeks left in December. This is perfect holiday time entertainment and something different. It's not a remake. It's not a reboot. It's not a sequel. It's something that's brand new while still invoking probably a lot of things that you like. So I can't recommend it highly enough. I would actually say this is probably my favorite horror film that I've seen all year. I just really, really dug it.
That's outstanding. That's a really great.
We have to do this next year for our Christmas episode. We have to.
All right, I think that sounds fair. Drew, did you? I'm sorry, Adam. Did you have anything to endorse?
God, I mean, after that, I got nothing. and seriously, I got nothing after that. So no, pass.
Well,
Okay.
I will tell you that we went to see the riff tracks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with riff tracks.
Oh yeah,
like
that.
Cast of Mystery Science Theater. Yeah. Anyway, we went to see the riff tracks thing, like a live, thing at the theater. It's called Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny.
Yep.
Was it a Fathom event?
It was. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, right. So
okay,
you go to
cool.
the movie theater and you're basically watching. And it's not with very little delay. You're basically watching what they're doing in another theater across the country. But anyway, I cannot, in good faith, endorse Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, but I would like to wholeheartedly endorse Riff Tracks because they're so hilarious. I was crying. I was laughing so hard at one point, a couple of points actually, and it's just the absurdity of the stories that they were showing, the shorts, and then the feature. This Santa Claus has for some reason gotten stuck in his sleigh's got stuck on a beach, like in the sand, and the reindeer's taken off. He's just super hot, and all these kids are trying to help him, and they're bringing him random farm animals or whatever. And then finally, this character called the Ice Cream Bunny shows up with a truck to rescue him or whatever. But just as an example of something that was just killing me, the Ice Cream Bunny looks like an Easter bunny, and every time they would show the Ice Cream Bunny, they just go, it's just so,
because it has no dialogue.
so weird. Like, the whole thing is just surreal. So if there's a way for you to watch that riff tracks of this thing, then do that. But if not, just anything riff tracks, because they're just, it's so funny.
Yeah. We're going to a lot of Riff Tracks events lately. I mean, Adam, you went to Manos the Hands of Fate the same night that we did.
That's right. I've seen that in Plan 9. I've seen their version of Plan 9, and they were great.
I swear, the notion of laughing until you're crying, I absolutely felt that way with Manos the Hands of Fate. I mean, jeez. So yeah, that was a good one.
Actually, it turns out I'm looking at this now. It looks like December 15th is when Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny will sort of go on again. So if anybody's interested, go to fathomevents.com and
do it.
see
You will
where
not
it's
regret it.
playing in your local theater.
Yeah.
I will.
It's definitely worth it. It's a cool event. And they don't just show Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny. Oh no, they also show a number of horrible shorts that also involve.
So funny. So
it involves
funny.
Santa Claus. It's just all delightful. So yes, my endorsement is not nearly as bizarre as that, but I read a book called Hunted, a Jason Dark mystery. This is by a writer named Guido Henkel, and there's a long series of these books. They're all on Kindle, so like they're all ebooks. But what's really interesting here was that the Jason Dark stories to me are like the Avenger. I mean, Guido Henkel is really sort of capturing the feel of like Kenneth Robeson. These stories are really fast. They move from cliffhanger to cliffhanger. It's about this guy who is a consultant to Scotland Yard, just like Sherlock Holmes in Victorian London, except for that he has a Doctor Strange-like set of supernatural abilities, and his partner is a wise kung fu using Chinese woman who's also a chemist, if I recall correctly. And in this one, Hunted, the actual mystery is about Chinese hopping vampires. And so that was really cool. It was called Hunted, a Jason Dark mystery. Currently it's $3.99 at Kindle, and I really enjoyed it. And I think I may do an interview with Mr. Henkel pretty soon, because I want to hear how he makes the decisions that he does. So that is it. We will be back next week. I think I know which movie it'll be, but I don't think we've completely nailed it down yet. I have a feeling it's going to maybe be Asylum, maybe Vault of Horror. Haven't decided yet which of those two, but it's almost guaranteed to be either Asylum or Vault of Horror, because we're going to do 4 Amicus films, leaving 3 for us to come back and pick up probably at some future retrospective date. So thank you very, very much. Everybody, Adam, Drew, Julia, once again, thank you for spending the evening with us. And if you are listening, come to the Facebook page, argue with us, tell us that we're full of ourselves. We will totally engage with you. Please leave reviews on iTunes. If you haven't left a review, do so. That helps people find the show. If you have friends that you think would like the show, you should put them in your car and then play the show while you drive them around, and they will love it.
Preferably not at gunpoint or whatever.
Right. And,
ideally.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's an hour-and-a-half show. So if you live in Dallas, you put your friend in the car and say, hey, we're going to Austin for some hula hut. We're going to get some
you can't do that in an hour and a half.
Excellent
but
tacos.
You could make it to Tyler, Texas in an hour and a half.
You could get to Austin in an hour and a half.
No, not from Dallas.
No, you can't, Jason.
3-hour drive.
I've done that drive recently. That's 3 hours if you have good traffic.
3-hour drive.
Can you get to Killeen in an hour and a half?
Yeah, Killeen from Austin.
Yeah. Put them in a car. You're in Dallas in this ridiculously elongated example. You're in
Dallas to Waco is an hour and a half.
All right. You're going to go to Baylor University. You put them in the car. You say, we're going to go to
you actually live in Texas. You know how vast it is. I've had this conversation. I actually just had this conversation over dinner the other day, and having to explain how one part of Texas is the southeast and one part of Texas is the southwest to somebody, because they were.
No, somebody put the Texas over Europe, and it was one end of Texas is Portugal, and the other was Eastern Europe. I mean, it was ridiculous how much of Europe.
The conversation I was actually having with Grumpy from the Rid of the Bomb podcast actually, and he's from Florida, and he was like, well, I've moved from Florida to the Southwest, and I was like, Austin's not the Southwest, and he was like, well, yes it is, and I was like, no, man, look at a map. I said Texas is actually 3 different geographic locations. It's that big.
It's actually 5 climate zones.
5 climate zones, yeah.
Yeah, which is what is it? The big thicket, the desert, the coast,
plains.
And culturally, it really changes very differently depending on where because I grew up in Northeast Texas, and I never thought of myself as in the Southwest. That was never even it was very, very, very grits and gravy Southern. But if you go out to El Paso, that's definitely South. It's weird. Texas is weird. It's the only way to say it. Texas is weird.
This is fascinating.
Weird in a lot of ways.
But we are now far afield from an Amicus anthology about 5 unfortunate people.
Don't you dare cut this, Jason Henderson. This is important.
All right. Yes, it's very important. It is totally important. If you guys want to engage us further about the 5 climate zones of Texas also, you could.
If I listen to this and you cut this, we're going to have words.
No. I won't cut this. I'm lazy. I only cut it when it gets really, really, really bad. And usually that's undoubtedly something that I said. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic evening. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.